We are down to the last part of our topic about educational philosophers and their contribution to education. Noam Chomsky. He is an American theoretical linguist whose work from the 1950s revolutionized the field of linguistics by treating language as a uniquely human, biologically based cognitive capacity. Linguistics is the study of language, how we develop and learn language, how we communicate, and how language acquisition is related to things as diverse as brain structure and our social environment. Through his contributions to linguistics and related fields, including cognitive psychology and the philosophies of mind and language, Chomsky helped to initiate and sustain what came to be known as the cognitive revolution. Noam Chomsky proposed the idea that humans are born with a language acquisition device also known as LAD. It is said to be a mental faculty that enables children to learn the grammar of a language, and this innate knowledge is called universal grammar. Universal grammar is activated during first language acquisition, and the stages of grammar acquisition and language development seem to be independent of culture or language learned. Also, these stages of acquiring grammar follow the same sequence and duration across all languages. However, this doesn't explain the importance of environmental influence. According to Chomsky's hierarchy, grammars are divided into 4 types: Type 0, Type 1, Type 2, and 3. The following table shows how they differ from each other. Chomsky argued that linguistics should be a branch of cognitive psychology, or the study of mental processes like critical thinking, problem solving, and of course language. He also thought that the study of language acquisition had important contributions to make the study of cognition. Ralph Tyler. He is an educator who focused on assessments and evaluation. In 1949, he proposed the Tyler curriculum model in his publication, Basic Principles of Curriculum and Instruction. Tyler is often referred to as the father of evaluation or father of behavioral objectives. Aside from the educational assessment and evaluation, he is also associated with curriculum theory and development. The Tyler curriculum model is a curriculum design approach focusing on 4 core principles. These are objectives, selecting learning experiences, organizing learning experiences, and evaluation. John Galen SAYLOR. He is an American educator, Fulbright Professorship for Finland, and an author. And William Alexander, who is an author, American educator, and known as the father of the American middle school. SAYLOR and Alexander viewed curriculum development as consisting of 4 steps. According to them, curriculum is a plan for providing sets of learning opportunities to achieve broad educational goals and related specific objectives for an identifiable population served by a single school center. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is a Swiss-born philosopher, writer, and a political theorist whose belief states that man by nature is good. With this famous phrase, "Man is born free, but he is everywhere in chains," Rousseau asserts that modern states repress the physical freedom that is our birthright and do nothing to secure the civil freedom for the sake of which we enter into civil society. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was influential in the areas of government, literature, education, and philosophy. His ideas in social contract heavily influenced the Declaration of Independence. He claimed that people would give up unlimited freedom for the security provided by a government, but also that people of the state hold ultimate right to power. Maria Montessori. She's an Italian physician and educator who developed the Montessori method of teaching based on observations she made of children in her own child care center. The Montessori method is based on the idea that children learn best when the environment supports their natural desire to acquire skills and knowledge. Montessori is a method of education that is based on self-directed activity, hands-on learning, and collaborative play. In Montessori classrooms, children make creative choices in their learning, while the classroom and the highly trained teacher offer age-appropriate activities to guide the process. Alfred Binet. He is a French psychologist who played a dominant role in the development of experimental psychology in France and who made fundamental contributions to the measurement of intelligence. Binet published an article entitled New Methods for the Diagnosis of the Intellectual Levels of Subnormals that delineates his collaboration with THEODORE Simon. Together, they created the Binet-Simon scale, which was used to measure intelligence, or IQ test. This test was used to help identify students with mental retardation. The Binet-Simon scale is the first type of standardized test in the U.S. Louis Terman. He's an American psychologist who is well known for his studies with intelligence in children. After becoming a professor at Stanford, he worked on revising the original Binet-Simon scales for use with American populations. His updated version of the test became known as the Stanford Binet and went on to become the most widely used IQ test. Scoring on the test was signified by the intelligence quotient, or IQ, which takes account of both chronological age and mental age, so that the average child of any age has an IQ of 100. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale was the first large-scale intelligence measure built upon the characteristics of the Binet-Simon scale. This scale was created to help accurately place students in the right educational level according to their intellectual and cognitive abilities. Terman suggested that gifted children should be identified early, offered tailored instruction, and have access to specially trained teachers. Daniel Goleman. He's an internationally known psychologist and authored a number of books with subjects emotional intelligence. Goleman popularized the idea that it is not sufficient for managers to have a high IQ and be technically skilled. If they wanted to win the hearts and minds of staff, they also needed to be emotionally intelligent. Goleman identified 5 characteristics that managers needed to develop if they were to be successful. William Kilpatrick was a college president and philosopher of education and was one of the great teachers of his time and a leading figure in the American progressive education movement. Kilpatrick supported Dewey's view of getting away from rote memorization and a rigid curriculum and replacing it with a child-centered approach. For Kilpatrick, education was about the social development of the child rather than their cognitive development through the mastery of content. This is not saying that the mind did not matter. The emphasis was on learning to think and not focusing on what to think. Kilpatrick's consistent progressive message was that schools needed to be more child-centered, democratic, and socially oriented. Johann Herbart. He's a founding figure of modern psychology and educational theory. He's a German philosopher and educator who led the renewed 19th century interest in realism and is considered among the founders of modern scientific pedagogy. His theory of education, known as Herbartianism, which advocated 5 formal steps in teaching. This method also called the 5 formal steps of the recitation. These are preparation, presentation, association, generalization, and application. Herbart's influence on educational theory is very important even at the present time. He not only developed a philosophical psychological rationale for teaching, but a teaching method as well. Herbart believed that the mind was the sum total of all ideas which entered into one's conscious life. He emphasized the importance of both the physical and the human environment in the development of the mind. To Herbart, ideas were central to the process. He felt they grouped themselves into what he called apperceptive masses. By assimilation or apperception, New ideas could enter the mind through association with similar ideas already present. This was the learning process. Horace Mann was an American politician and education reformer best known for promoting universal public education and teaching training in normal schools. He was an American educator, the first great American advocate of public education who believed that in a democratic society, education should be free and universal, non-sectarian, democratic in method, and reliant on well-trained professional teachers. Mann was often called the father of the common school because when he was elected to act as secretary of the newly created Massachusetts Board of Education in 1837, he used his position to enact major educational reform. He spearheaded the common school movement, ensuring that every child could receive a basic education funded by local taxes. Mann developed his hugely influential, although at the time controversial, main principles regarding public education and its troubles.